So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about some things that have been going on in the game, and some feedback and some opinions about like things that are happening. And hopefully you guys can hear us okay. I just turned us all up a little bit. Um, and we will kind of go from there. So obviously, like the big thing going on this week, I guess we'll just start with the elephant in the room, right? And that is that this is like the week of lock, right? Or the week that was supposed to be all about lock, but just a bunch of things like missing or like failed expectations and things like that. So, what are some things that you guys kind of feel like gut reactions to this week and what's going on or not going on? But what kind of comes up for you guys?
For me, the disappointing thing is that Locke is basically just neglected entirely, which, kind of throws him to the curve. He's gonna, the top 10 whales will, of course, pull him, and you'll probably see him on like a rank 1 DV team this week, or this month, I mean, and then you'll just never see him again, kind of like Nelica. Those kind of players have to pull everything. For everyone else, it's an extremely easy skip, and it didn't have to be. It did not have to be. It could have been a desirable unit across the board to both hardcores and casuals alike, with a few small adjustments, and it's just like the global team just said we could care less, ship him, no one's going to pull, who cares? Let the game just spiral downwards.
Really, for me, what it comes down to is Gumi set their own precedent here. They have given Clash of Wills updates in some way, shape, or form to almost every recent
Mm.
uh, JP premium unit. And what they've shown us now is that obviously they're going to pick and choose and probably prioritize units that they feel are going to sell well. Um, Clearly this was always just a throwaway to say that they gave us a CG premium, but not actually care about the rest of it. But really, what they're showing us at this point is they are willing to take this game down to being an every other week thing that we care about. You now have an event that none of us really care about. Anybody who's been playing longer than I would say a year doesn't care about the gear affiliated with the event. Gathering units, chances are, even again, 1 to 2 year players pulling casually probably have enough gathering units to make a full bonus team to one shot a level 3 raid 10 times and then do nothing for the rest of the day. It's just what are we doing? What is left in the game? There's nothing to do. At this point I find myself saving what little content there is to do for weeks like this so that I have something that maybe I can do if I decide to, but then also what's the point?
We don't have content. Like, you giving us a raid is your thing for the week, and that being the only thing that you do, this is not worth. Like, if they change, maybe if they change how raids work, if the raids work like they did in other games, where like it's not like top 10,000 get this, where it was like each individual thing gets something different, and the top end had like really good um like prize payout. Let's say like if you were top like I don't know 100 in this raid or whatever. Hey, here's 10k lapis.
Oh,
Right? Like, think about it. Think how hard you would have to work for it, right? Because like it's not going to be like, hey, I'm going to put effort in now and get it. I mean, like you're going to have to actually work for it, and then like it makes people want to spend, right? Like makes people want to spend even more. Like, oh, it was top 100, and then let's say it trickled down somewhere. Like, let's say we did like top 10,000, like top 1,000. Like, hey, top 1,000 gets 6k lapis. Achievable for a decent amount of people, right? You might
Mm.
actually try to do that. Like, you don't have to be a full on whale to do that, right? But you're gonna have to put some effort in and find whatever the best comps are for like different scoring. Obviously, you have to change a lot of things with this ideology, but like it's something they could do, right? Like just to make it more interesting, instead of us putting us on this rotation of hey, if it's not Dark Visions or Clash of Wills, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever cared about my raid rank, honestly. Like there was one time where it was just kind of funny because of like what time of day I started doing it. Like I was in the top 100 and I thought that was kind of funny. But other than that, I've never really cared. Like what my rank was in a raid, just because the rewards are not worth it.
Exactly. Like the raid rewards we often get are just a couple of rare summon tickets and a trust moogle. And at this point, in most veteran players and even 1 to 2 year old players are drowning in trust moogles at this point.
Mm-hmm.
To be
Like,
complete. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, just to be completely honest, to kind of disagree with Sketch a little bit. For these kind of uninteresting weeks, I really, honestly, just I can't get behind the idea that the solution would be to reward grinding a raid harder. I feel like you need to put interesting content that is fun to play, because raids, as they are probably one of the least liked, recurring events in the game, because they are just so incredibly grindy and unfun. I think for these kind of dead weeks, they need to do, for example, more interesting of the EX stages. It's a whole different issue that they are just skipping them entirely. But they had kind of the right idea with the challenge mode Veritas of the Frost that came out last week. It ended up being a huge flop, in my opinion. It was not tuned well. It was poorly done. But the idea of that was outstanding. It's just poor execution, which can be fixed. They can just realize, oh, we made this way too easy. Maybe next time it'll be, more of a Teleforsanis kind of thing, just a pie in the sky. But, better than it was. But something like that, I was extremely hyped for. And if it had been something on the level, even if it's more like mid-tier upper level, for example, like one of the Grace trials, which can still be crushed with a veteran account, but they're still pretty challenging content. Something like that on a weekly basis would be amazing. It would give us something to do at the very least for the first day. And then, people that hype up the game, content creators like myself, Gert, etc., we would have something to do for the entire week. We could do different teams on like the grace of the Octomammon Final Fantasy IV fight or whatever. Something for the week, and we could have something to do all week long. It gives players something to keep engaged with in the game. But instead, like this week, it is nothing at all, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I think you
See,
pretty much hit the nail
what I
on the
like
head
the
for me.
most, yeah, like what I like the most is you bring up Tulfosanis again, which is probably global's most amazing event in its entire history, and
Agreed.
it sucks we have not had an event like that again, because that was truly the event that defined the game as the community helping each other out, whether it was content creators such as yourself, Sinzar, creating various kinds of teams for different accounts that could hit certain levels of difficulty with the fight, because there was always a higher level reward for individual completion, but at the same time there was rewards for community completion at the same time, which brought all of us together to try and achieve as much as possible for everyone to win ultimately.
And it's even, I could take it one step further, because Telfosanis did one thing to me that in a game like FFBE, where you have a new unit every single week, we need to care about whatever that unit is. So what did Telfosanis do? Telfosanis had 2 different fights as a part of that event with fixed teams, that you didn't have to have the units. You had fixed teams with fixed gear, and they said, go, do the challenge. So
It
why
was
can't we just do that? Give us trials that already exist. Just reskin the Morgana Chamber of the Vengeful fight. Give us a party composed of the units we currently have with just the generic gear that you would probably have on the tester phone that they use to do these stupid events in the live streams. Do that, because then now players are getting a chance to use units that they probably don't have, and it's making them care more about potentially pulling them off banner, or potentially caring about having those units on a banner to try to pull for them, because if it works really well and they happen to have every other unit that's in the fixed party, well, now all of a sudden I know how to use this party because we just got a piece of content that made me learn how units, but also how to make these units synergize in such a way that I can probably apply this to other pieces of content. Now, of course, the big shiny asterisk is they have to give us other content to justify using other team comps, but the
Yeah.
point stands. If you give us fixed trials with fixed teams, that requires minimal effort, and you code it across the board. And then again, the community is going to work together to try to figure out how to beat these trials, even if the reward is something stupid like an emblem and a few hundred lapis. That's interesting. And the time
You know,
spent trying to figure out how to use those units together is interesting, as opposed to
you know,
this.
this could even extend to legacy characters from different series games. Like we could
Correct.
have uh, a revamp of series boss battles, but it's fixed teams locked to that legacy. So we could have like a Final Fantasy VIII battle against Sorceress Adia, and the fixed team is the Premium Squall, Renoa, Irvine, Elfie, NVA, and Laguna, for just a random example. Well, and we have to try and figure out how to synergize the whole team properly to beat Adia, especially with the fact that the team completely lacks a tank, for example.
I mean, and let's go even further. Let's make it more exciting. Let's reskin Chaotic Darkness and give us a team that only has 2 Neos and a couple 7-stars. And then say, go. Do that. Why not? Like 7-star Sylvie could still be the support for most things.
That's
Let's
exactly what
be
I was
honest.
thinking. Can one of them be
You know, like
7-star Sylvie?
absolutely it can be 7-star Sylvie
Yeah.
because she's still incredible, right? You can still use an un-NVA Benevolent Beauty Rem
Mm-hmm.
as a decent elemental support unit,
Yeah.
if for no other reason than potentially imbues or mirages or whatever. Like, you can do this in such a way that makes it interesting, and to make it so that I don't glaze over every time I see a rainbow drop from a pull, because all of a sudden I don't care.
Yeah.
Rainbows haven't mattered in the 2.5, almost 3 years now. So
At this
make there
point,
be content that teaches us that you can still use 7-stars to do current content as long as it's not lockout rank content.
yeah, and
So
at this
basically,
point, the only time you care about a 7-star is some STMRs they have are still relevant, like
Which is what, like
Tyrion.
3? Yeah, Furion,
Yeah, like
Irvine,
Very few. Very
that's about
few.
it.
very few.
What were you gonna say,
yeah.
Sketch?
I was going back to like the raid thing. So like, basically, my idea was like berries, where I just want the raids to just become the Morgana fights,
Mm-hmm.
and then like they use orbs anyway. Just transfer them over to all the more like Morgana difficulty fights, and like have the different difficulties. You can get all your rewards without doing the last difficulty, minus that fight specific rewards. And then Barry also hit on like the second thing I was going to say is like make the raids. Hey, you have to use characters from this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like and once you do that, like people are going to find different like party combinations, like because then people might be invested and be like, I want to use my favorite first. Like I really like Rydia. Rydia has really bad units in this game. Okay, if you make
Mm-hmm.
a Final Fantasy IV fight, or like if the Antlion, right, the Antlion that we have for our raid, which we'll talk about that later, it doesn't make sense at all.
Yep.
If the Antlion was a Morgana fight, be like, I'm forcing Rydia. We're gonna find out what the best comp I can take that lets me use Rydia, right? Like for something that's not just like, hey, I'm there, I help. So like, I imagine there's a lot of people out there be trying to do that, and you can make videos on it. Be like, hey, these different comps, you don't need all full MV team. Hey, some of these 7-stars are good, right? Like, it's like, hey, maybe this person used Kane. Maybe this person decided that they wanted to try to use the twins. Like nobody really used the Palom and Porum unit, right? You can find
Mm-hmm.
uses for them there. Maybe let's see, like maybe you could tune the fight as the company around some of the units that you know aren't very popular, right? Like maybe Palom and Porum are extremely good against this fight, and it's synergy locked, and you're like, hey, it's synergy locked all the synergy is going to give X amount of stats like we are in Vision World, right? This can't be too hard to set up. Like, and you have rewards, like even if it's just an emblem, like hey, maybe you get an emblem that says Final Fantasy IV Master, or you get an emblem that says like Light of Final Fantasy IV or something like that. That's like just something cool if it's your favorite game that you could put on your profile. And like that's not like a huge deal, but it's like Sinzar was saying, like where they did a good like direction when they were working on the Frost Veritas extra thing. There's no saying we can't have extra things like this that hey, it doesn't matter. The rewards don't really matter. Yeah, maybe it's a few hundred lapis woo whatever, and then like an emblem. But people will want to clear this content, and then you can have different content creators try different teams. Like, hey, I don't have every MV, right? Like, I'm been free to play for a while. Outside of like, I bought one pass during an anniversary, like the heroic pass thing that like almost everybody I knew bought because it was just such an insane deal. Like, I don't have everything. Let's just make a team. Yeah, I gotta use some sevens. Like, yeah, let's just use some 7-star units, right? Like, I'm sure you can find someone. Maybe you have a 7-star Rosa because you don't have Envy Rosa and you need a healer or something like that, right? Like you can get heals covered by a 7-star unit like very easily. Like you can use your own gear, right? It's not like the gear is locked. Like you can make different things work. There's so many ideas, but that's what I want them to do with raid. I just want them to put the raids, get rid of the whole thing, rework the raids into the Morgana system, and make people care about clearing them.
Yeah. So in chat right now, Taigia is bringing up a good point. You know, that we're talking about content that is like encouraging us to use units from a specific series. But it sounds a lot like series lock content that people complained about in global and then complained about, and then they just kind of disappeared. And like, do we like series locked content? Do we not like series locked content? That's I guess that's a good question for all five of us.
I didn't really want to like jump in as once again being like, you know, the other side of the coin, but I have to just like really disagree with a lot of the stuff y'all have just said. Like fixed
Please.
parties, series locked, unit locked. I really do just hate all of that in the game. Like the Clash of Wills we currently have is a good example of poor design where you just push out specific units because like it's a gotcha game. I'm either spending time, resources, or real money to pull for units. And then for me to pull for a unit and the developers to then turn around and say, sorry, you cannot use the unit you pulled for, I think that is one of the absolute worst things they can possibly do. So I really just hate fixed party content. I hate series locked content. I hate stuff like the Clash of Wills where it heavily penalizes mages and, you know, wrong elements and all that. Like, you know, if I'm going to pull from my favorite unit, let me use that unit. And that unit doesn't have to be the best option for every fight. There are ways to, for example, incentivize using other stuff, give it an elemental weakness. Therefore, I'm not going to use my Genesis because it's not fire weak. But don't just lock Genesis out of the fight entirely. That I feel like is I don't like that kind of stuff. Just, you know, that's just me.
So how would you feel about it if like it wasn't locked and like raids were like the Morgana fight where you could bring whoever you wanted?
Well, you keep saying the raids like the Morgana fight. Are you talking about like every single orb I spend is going to be like a 7-turn slog? Because that I really don't want to fight like release day Morgana every raid orb. That's hugely grindy and time intensive, and like after the first time or two, it would get horrible doing that 24 times a day for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Like,
No. I think you misunderstand me. I want there to be an optional difficulty for like small extra things at the top, but that's not your farmable stage.
Oh, so you mean just add like basically an EX boss? Absolutely. I would absolutely love a one-time kill trial for every single event. Love it. I would love that. You kill one time and you're done. That would be perfect.
That would be like in the old story events, like the old story events where like the last level would give you like the 5-star ticket. You know, like
those were great.
That was a lot of fun. It was something to do after you slogged through, you know, use lightning and fire damage at one time a turn. Like after you did all that, like got to the end and like actually had to try at it. Like, yes, that would be super good.
That's what I meant by locked content too, like by party lock content. I don't mean like force us to use that for the event. I mean, give me a one-time fight once a week where it's just an old boss that you reskinned and give us a fixed party to use just as like a challenge to say, hey, make these units work for this fight. Still give us other content and other events that are relevant to the week, but let there be that so that at least if that's there and the rest of the week is a raid that no one cares about, I can at least, try to put my brain together to come up with that trial, even if it only lasts me an hour.
Here's the thing about that though, right? That content does not sell units, right? Because they're giving you the units, they're giving you the equipment. That does not, other than giving players who are just enjoying having fun playing the game something to do, like that is not, I don't think that would make them any money.
You're right, but what it does is it keeps people playing the game. And at this point, with the degree of attrition that this game seems to have, and I mean, you and I see it more than most, right? We watch people quit the game every single day in a post, one way or another. And then people comment something along the lines of, yeah, I'm about on my way out too. And the attrition is coming due to the lack of apathy and the lack of content and the fact that Gumi has basically decided that they can just give us units and the people who are going to throw money at the game are going to throw money at the game to rank high. And if you don't want to put money into our game, that's okay. We'll close eventually with whether or not we have your money. And so what they really need to do, other than try to give the players some sense of goodwill, which I'm sure we'll come to at some point, is they have to give people something to do. Because, like, I go in, I'm going to use my 10 raid orbs. I'm going to go and hit consume all on my arena orbs for those of us who still actually do arena. And then I'll finish my dailies, and then I put my phone down and never think about the game for the rest of the day. And there have been days recently where I haven't done anything, which I've done all of my dailies. I've done everything that you can possibly do every day in this game for 6 years. And so for all of a sudden there to be so nothing that I don't even consider questioning, did I finish all of my dailies today? The game it's not so much that it's dying, it's that they are allowing it to just kind of phase out.
Yeah.
And if that's what they want to do, fine. Tell us. Let us know that that's what you want to do and that you have a potential end of service plan in place. Fine. Now, obviously, they won't do that because that's, financial suicide. But regardless, but it's not going to sell units to do content like that. No, but it's going to keep people interested enough in the game to be excited about what's this new content going to be, what's this new trial going to be, who am I going to have to figure out how to use with it, in the example of fixed content. And that alone, just to give us something to do, could at least draw this out a little longer and make people care. And then if they want, they can throw in the new on banner unit and say, hey, look how great this is and how wonderful that just made this old thing that maybe if you haven't cleared it yet, you can use this unit with these party, and there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
And like,
go ahead.
go ahead.
A good example of like extra cool content that it's very easy for them to do was that new difficulty for the Sephiroth fight. Right? I know a lot of people love that fight. That fight was very fun to me for sure. Like, we were talking about like lock stuff, right? It's not locked for the content, but you got a locked materia that was really, or like it's better on Final Fantasy VII characters anyway, which is like stuff like that, really cool. You want to make things usable by everybody, that's also fine, right? But the fact is that it was extra content that people loved. Like I remember when they announced that, people in Reddit were like, "Wait, what? Did JP get this?" Like,
And do you know what the absolute best thing about that is? Is that content was probably the lowest effort they could possibly do, and it was still great. It is literally the exact same fight.
Just bulkier.
No changes whatsoever from the JP version. They just increased the stats. That is it. They've got 19 series boss battles they could have that are just as high quality as Sephiroth by doing nothing but increasing the stats. That is so low effort and so minimal work. All this thing about they're low on manpower, etc. They need no translation, no testing, nothing. One person edits a single number on a unit, and they've got a whole new fight. It is fresh and reinvigorated for Neovisions, and it is why don't they do that every single week? That's 5 weeks. I mean, 5 months of content, one per week. Even if they do one per month, that's 2 years of content, and
And
we've gotten one.
you could blend what we're talking about with that by saying one like just a single challenge mission for something that's like important, cool, and relevant is use series content, like use series units.
Mm-hmm.
You could.
Yeah, and not
Not the whole
everything
fight.
needs to
Don't
be,
lock the whole
like-
fight to it. Just say like, hey, if you want to get like the special materia, then you've got to use series units or something like that.
Sure. Or put them behind a
Yeah.
quest lock like shares and shards.
There you go.
Yeah, like that those kind of missions can make or break content sometimes. And I personally enjoy having those little bit of challenges because sometimes it feels like bragging rights. And that's why I like the idea that the extra stage of fixed party content to be just fun bragging rights if it reward is just like something minuscule or insignificant like an emblem, because at least the emblem is like, hey, this is a bragging right for
Yeah.
me. Like,
Yeah, I like that
I mean,
idea.
all of us have, everybody here has an emblem up that they like from bragging right perspective, right? Like my emblem on my profile is the rank 1 of Final Fantasy VIII Vision World, because Final Fantasy VIII is my favorite in the entire series franchise, and I was so happy I managed to rank 1 it, because I was definitely struggling with that one.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one thing that stands out, and it was already brought up in chat too, that with series locked stuff, you've got to have the units to be able to do it. So there are some series that don't have a lot of units, or there maybe are only like one NeoVisions unit for that series or something like that. So like in those, obviously you want to have NVAs that are useful and relevant. But lately we've been like not getting some NVAs and maybe even not getting some units. So let's kind of shift a little bit and talk about that if we can for just a minute. Like what is some of the stuff that you feel like is most impactful that we're missing right now compared to, what we would have seen in the Japanese version of the game for like this week's worth of stuff?
For me, it would be
Personally,
for me, it would be the unit crowns. The crowns, again, they're hit or miss. Some of the crowns from JP would have done absolutely nothing. The unit would have stayed dead. But some of these crowns that we're skipping are quite useful, and they're really good budget options. Mostly the crowned units are still not going to make it into like the top 10 teams in Dark Visions, but you could absolutely see many of these skipped crown units on like the top 500, even the top 100 teams and Dark Visions and all. And they're skipping these crowns. And these also, I mean, again, if they're going to skip the stages entirely, whatever. But these units were also really good for those locked stages, like gathering only units. You're going to take the crowned Balthier. Well, if Balthier is not getting his crown, he's going to be basically power crept and useless, so he can't be a useful unit on a gathering only EX stage. Stuff like that. As far as like the NeoVisions Awakenings and all, I really do want them. Just speaking bluntly, they're pretty terrible at this point. JP has been just really dropping the ball, and ever since Axstar, which was probably a mistake, all of them have been absolutely worthless. So even though we are skipping Terra, Palom, and Zzat, like other than people going for some themed team, you're never ever going to see these units. Even if we did get them, no one's going to use them. So it sucks that we're skipping them, but like I'm not, shedding tears over them.
Yeah.
But the crowns are absolutely a big deal that we're skipping, and it's very unfortunate.
But so like Balthier, right? So Balthier is a great example though. Like Balthier does he does water in one form and fire in the other, right?
Yes, but they actually changed him to Purifier.
Pure
with his
fire.
crowns.
Cool. Well, guess what? We just had a really great unit that like lets us use fire in fun ways. In fact, like that would have been a great time to let Balthier have his moment. And Sabin too. Like Sabin is fire damage as well. Sabin was supposed to be this week too, right? Like 2 units that get up like that do fire damage that would have gone really great with the fire unit you all just pulled for, like, have some fun. But no, it's like, ugh. I use my Balthier
It's
every
funny.
day, okay? I use my Balthier to farm the Esper Ore stage with auto attack, and I'm sad that I can't upgrade my Balthier.
I'll go ahead and just
Like-
throw out there one more time. Let's not forget that Zizot used to be one of the best
Mm.
fast clear trial or fast clear any content units. So giving him an NVA could at least increase his base stats enough to make his old auto attack excitement more exciting again.
Yes, yes.
For sure. And like going back with skip content on the crown, as Sinzar said, like not even just for the fact that it might help make some older units relevant again, it helps make people's love of that character become relevant again. And like we're gonna beat the dead horse yet again. Like Sinzar, you're always gonna be pissed about the fact that Barth's upgrades are gone because Barth is one of your favorite characters. I'm gonna be pissed about the fact that Yuna crowns were skipped for her 150 amp. Now she's no longer relevant because she can't use her 150 amp. And I mean, everybody else here, there's probably at least one unit you loved that you were looking forward to the crowns of that has been skipped and won't be getting them, and thus that unit fades into the benches.
Mm-hmm.
I will just say the one unit I would love to get crowns will probably never ever see crowns and was never intended to get crowns, because how would you actually crown Sylvie? You can't. There's nothing you could do. She's good. She's still good. She's still
And here's
viable.
the thing,
She doesn't need
like
it.
No.
if and here's the thing, like we're coming up in the crystal ball of JP's future, or Sylvie and Esther are released within the Road to NV Plus. Like the they're the banner just before the Esper Ruin event occurs. So if there was actually going to be crowns or upgrades for Sylvie and Esther, this would be the relevant time for it to happen, and which would be coinciding with JP's release of them.
Were they any good
But
in JP?
hell no.
The JP version. I'm not familiar with Sylvie because she's one of those. It costs $1,000 to get her, so I just didn't even look at her. Care less.
I see.
Yeah,
Esther is
yeah.
actually Esther's actually very good, and it's a shame that they got that version and we don't have it because their Esther is actually kind of better. She's more of a pure tank, but she's got fields. She's got good fields, and she's like more of an actual tank, whereas our Esther is like, she's a tank, but doesn't have the whole tanking kit.
Mm.
Like the party mitts, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas their Esther is, a tank with good fields, basically, and that's useful. That's useful.
I've looked at their JP Sylvie. She is much worse compared to our Sylvie. She doesn't have as much of the variety of kit that ours has. She's more in line with JP's buffer design, like generic wise. Uh she's also wind focused instead of earth and lightning.
What?
She's pure wind, I think. And I think her base LB, which is the 100% all elemental resistance and
Uh-huh.
defense buffs, is reduced to a 60% amp. And yeah, it's not even a defensive buff anymore.
How about that?
Yeah, so still we got the shaft.
So we focused a whole lot on what we're skipping from JP. And again, this is, I guess, more of a dead horse issue, but how about the fact that global units just don't get crowns, period? Like once a year. So we got Kaito and Carton buffs, 2 months ago. The Kaito buffs were really good in Clash. The Carton buffs were completely worthless. But that's like it. The entire year long, we've had, 2 units and one of them was useless. So,
but Sinzar, it's almost like they tried to sell us global unit upgrades.
oh, the intrinsics. No, I'm not talking about the like actual literal crowns. Like intrinsics
Oh.
were, the whole Navi thing was obviously a train wreck as well, and then they did the same. You got to craft the ones for Tiana or something. I forget.
Like
They had
pretty
a
much
few of them.
everybody. Yeah.
Oh
Tiana,
yeah.
Tartan.
It was
Yeah.
it was Malia.
Oh,
There
Mm.
was
Melia.
Louise.
Oh, God.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, and
you had to craft a bunch of them.
yeah, and those were
Eldrin.
all
Yeah.
pretty terrible too. It's not worth it at all. So
Mhm.
yeah, like where's like the good global upgrades? I mean, they do it so rarely. They do it every now and then. Esther, the premium Esther, did get an overhaul last anniversary, and
Mhm.
it was good. It gave her another few months of life, and it was nice. But like once a year, can we please get it more than that?
And it's not the units that make
Yeah.
sense too, because it's not like they ever tried to defensively fix Vilk.
Mm-hmm.
Never even attempted to salvage the wreckage of what was considered a premium unit.
A
For the
global
anniversary,
premium
that was
unit
supposed to be the
that
cornerstone unit.
Yes. In chat right now, Azamar's popping up. Where are the Ellis Sparrows buffs that we've been
Oh,
promised?
what
Seriously.
a great question. Right next to our 20,000
it,
Lapis Pud.
Yes, right there.
yeah. And here's another thing with like global units. Like this is both from my personal friend and Barry, you'll appreciate this as well. Well, we get so many global units, but we don't get anything else with them other than the relevant class they're related to. So at best, we get one story event a year, and it's the anniversary story event, and it'll be either a precursor focused story event with introducing either Elena, Louise, Rick, Wilt, Yoshikiri, etc., or it'll be just another clash event. And it sucks to me because we got all these really creative, unique characters they've made for us on Global Original, and they do nothing with them story wise,
Mm.
practically. Like, I have so many things that I would want to see story wise, whether it's with Chinese New Year units. Like, I'd want to see more story with Ong and Yan. I'd want to see stuff with Emperor Fu and his 4 generals. And I mean, I would even love to see the story of Cao and how he became a guardian spirit, even though, like, oh my god, we'll probably cry because Doggo dies to become a guardian spirit.
I
Like,
I
I
I
just
will
want to point
say.
out for the crowd, I
Oh,
am not the first person who mentioned Ong in this call. Carry on.
You're not. Go for it,
I
Sinzar.
yeah, I took it away from you.
oh. I just will say that to come to their defense, I will say that story events are, in terms of the manpower and the teams needed to get them done. You've got like translation, you've got the writers, then you've got the coders on top of that. So story events are a big deal. They should still do them more anyway, but those are probably a bigger deal than the majority of people realize.
Mm.
Involved in getting them created. You've got the art, everything. Because a lot goes into a story event.
We
But they could still give us similar things. For example, you mentioned some of the lore stuff. Like, for example, Louise's story event, I forget who it was, like the person that the bad guy of Louise's story was like her friend that turned evil or something, if I remember correctly. That could be like a Chamber of the Vengeance boss, and maybe toss in like 3 lines of in-battle dialogue that reference the story, something like that. At least it would be like a connection to the lore, and it would give us content as well. Something like that is what I personally would think they should do a lot more with.
Sketch and I have talked about exactly that. That we would love to have seen people take Clash of Wills bosses and then repurpose them with like even just a couple lines of dialogue at the beginning of the fight into Chamber of the Vengeful, so that we could get something out of them, something that made us care about who they are, what they were, what they did, and how to world build with them.
Mhm.
That is a couple lines of dialogue. that really aren't even dialogue. It's like, hey, here's this thing that you probably mashed through before the fight started because you didn't know it was there. But just that little bit could add so much to their own world building that they've given us characters for and never touched again. And we know nothing about it.
Well, and also this is I think gonna be fun for Sinzar too. Like story events and EX fights and interesting things that are tied specifically to these characters often come with unique gear and stuff, unique items. So like with the Esther's story event that had like the Dark Esther gave us the lightning fast legend materia. And then like the Vilk story had the other extreme nova chaining materia and just like interesting things that just get tied to these events. How I understand maybe a story event is too much, but like having an EX fight that just like teaches us a little bit something about them or something that also like gives us something unique for having played at the time it came out. Like I don't know, just stuff to do, rewards to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Stuff to do. That'd be great.
And it's so strange too. Like the current week is just such a like negative press from the player base that's so dead, and it comes at the same time as this Dissidia shutdown.
Ugh.
And like I have been browsing Discord for the past 2 days. Like it is nothing but players talking about Dissidia shutting down and when is it happening to Brave Exvius. This is like the absolute worst time they could have chosen for this dead week. And it's all run by Square Enix. They definitely knew it was happening. The Brave Exvius team knew as well because Square Enix runs all of that. So they should have said, we're having to close down this game for whatever reasons. It's got to be done, sad face. But we need to like generate some positive reinforcement for our existing games, the ones that are continue. So make sure this week is a really hype week that everyone's going to be excited about to take away the focus of this shutting down. But instead, like it's one of the worst weeks in 6 months, and they choose this as the time at the same time as shutting down this, and it's causing like just so much negativeness. I mean, like I'm browsing the Discord right now, and people are talking about when is EOS for Brave Exvius, and it's just like who is managing the game to do this?
Well, to be fair, people have been talking
about
about the EOS situation for a long time, but in particular, like it started really stirring up for people with the accidental compensation thing. People were saying like if they do one thing, like they're gonna quit. And another camp of people altogether was like, okay, if they do this thing, I'm gonna quit. And like that if they took option C and gave everybody the compensation, then it's going to bankrupt the game, and that's going to bring out the end of service anyway. So like people have just been like talking and talking and talking. It's not just this week. It's been going on for a long time.
And honestly, it's so soul draining at times to see it. Like I have to step away from Discord at times when I see all this talk about like end of service, it's the end of days for FFBE, the end times are near, we're never going to see the game again, the game's going to shut down midway at some point. It's just like, it hurts at times. Like I know the game's end is inevitable at some point, but for someone who, like, this game has brought a lot of joy in my life when I've had some very, very rough fucking days that I've been dealing with. Like, sorry for the strong language,
You're
people.
good.
Like,
You're good.
Holy shit. There were some days I was just absolutely miserable and just drowning myself in FFBE was like a little bit of a good day for me when I needed it. And coming to this community when it was positive, when it was happy, like when we had laughs over some, some of the dead weeks. We used to laugh and joke about the dead weeks and make memes of it.
Mm-hmm.
But now, anytime we have these dead weeks, we just boil up all this negativity to the point that it's just raining. And I mean, there's already enough crap going on in the world that it what to be an escapism. Like this game is escapism from some of the shit we deal with in the real world. That like just walking into this same level of crap on the Discord channel is just it burns both ends of the candlestick,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's one of those things. I I'm one of the people who played Dissidia on and off over the course of its entire life. I had a good time with it. I enjoyed it, and then it got a lot, and then I came back, and then it got a lot, and it's one of those games that was easy to put down. You come back, you basically have to learn a whole new game, and it is what it is. But the one thing Dissidia really had going for it was that it was extremely free to play friendly. Now, while that's great from a player base perspective,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a good decision financially. And we saw a completely unrelated game fall to a similar fate with Dragalia Lost. For anyone who ever played that game was a lot of fun, and it was great as a free to play player because you were probably going to pull what you wanted eventually, and most of the units were permanent. And that game, it felt like died very quickly, even though and someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like that was a Nintendo owned game as a mobile game. And so now we transition into what FFBE is trying to do in this gotcha sphere. Well, it, they have to start to take a little bit more initiative with how the community is responding to what we see happening in the game. Because nobody has missed the fact that we're only getting things to do every other week. That's not something people are ignorant to.
See, but here's the
We
thing.
now
If
go ahead.
you never paid any attention to like the Japanese version of the game, if you didn't know that page on the wiki exists that showed you all the updates for the weeks, and you were just logging in and playing the global version of the game, you would log in this week and you'd see that Locke and Galuf were on banner and there was a raid going on, and you'd probably just play the game, right?
Well, that's the
Probably.
thing. What
No,
what will we
no.
play? What will we play? Like, okay, so we didn't know that we're skipping the EX stages, but that doesn't change the fact that there's literally nothing to do this week, and like nothing. Like
It is
we've
nothing. Yeah, it
we've
is.
had like a minimum for 2 years, at least one standalone, special
Mm-hmm.
boss fight. Sure, most of the time they're turn one kills for veterans, but we've still had something. This, like, even if we didn't know we're skipping 6 different stages from JP, including an exploration, we would still log in and just be like, what's going on this week? There's a raid, the end. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not exciting. It's
Yeah.
just not.
And and also speaking from another perspective, I think even if someone was ignorant of what is coming from JP, or even if we didn't have knowledge of JP's release schedule, I think seeing what was released this week, I think we still all would have questioned what was going on because, like you said, we've had all these JP premium units upgraded to be Clash of Wills compatible,
Mm.
and seen that Locke is also a JP premium unit, but not getting any of those upgrades. We'd all still question it as to like why is Locke not getting it compared to Atmos Roka or Madine Taiva or
And
Yo, who just came out.
Yeah.
and the whole Dragon Quest collaboration as well. They aren't even
True.
premium, and they
Oh,
still
yeah.
got it.
Mhm.
Vern, Dai, and Avon all got Clash of Wills autocast, morale scaling, Clash of Wills tags, etc.
Mm.
And I think, again, for those who paid attention to how things kind of went down with Dissidia, I think where people are almost becoming hypersensitive to the entire situation, Dissidia was relentless for giving basically 2 new full events a week, right? The average turnover from the start of one event to the start of the next event, I want to say it was 4 to 5 days. And then
Yeah,
all
it
of a
was
sudden,
really
you were
fast.
only getting 1 event a week. And when you're used to, potentially 6 or 7 events in a month, now all of a sudden you have 4. And they did it in JP at the same time. And so what you started to see was all of a sudden there was a tremendous reduction in content, not that dissimilar to what we're currently having. And these
The only
situations
diff-
have become very parallel.
Mm.
The difference is we're still getting new units every week, whereas, I mean, so did Dissidia, but rather than renting new banners every 4 to 5 days, it was 1. And it's hard to ignore that if this is Square's MO and not necessarily indicative of Ninja Theory or Gumi in particular, it's hard to disregard that this is not dissimilar.
That's kind of scary.
And another thing that I've noticed that was a big difference between Cydia when it was running like multiple events within a week versus one event a week was the heavy change in reward content. Like
Yes.
when it was smaller, or when it was the shorter duration, the rewards were much smaller. But once they start doing one event a week, the rewards got exponentially bigger and crazier at times. And
Hmm.
a lot of the rewards kept upgrading alongside the change in meta relevancy in terms of like tokens to buy the weapons, because in the game you're not um, getting characters through the gacha, you're getting the different weapons characters equipped in the gacha for their abilities and their power. So like with FFBE, like, I want to be humble and say, like, even though this has been an absolute shit week that we've gotten content, especially with like the grim news and sad news at that of Dissidia Opera
Mm-hmm.
Omnia uh, announcing its end of service. And like, I got a lot of friends who play Opera Omnia who have just been posting nonstop on Twitter how much like this game changed their lives. This game's been there for them, just like how FFB's been there for all of us. Like, it's sad to see a game go. Oh, for sure. The only reason I feel hopeful that FFBE still holds a lot of relevance and is just not going to get a sudden EOF announcement within the next couple of months is because of just how, like, even though, like I said, we've had shit weeks right now, um, we've also had some real bangers this year. Like, everybody went insane when we got the Parasite Eve collab. Like, this is a collab we've been pushing for so long, and the fact that Umi went so far to get us this collaboration shows that there is still a love and care for the game point. And even our recent event with Hio and Veritas of the Frost, like, that's another event where a lot of care seems to have been put into like really cool designed units, a story relating to 2 characters that are very beloved within the entire game's community and story. And at the same time, I'll mention Brave Exvius' spin-off title, War of the Visions. They're very closely linked together, and since War of the Visions is still bringing in a lot of revenue on both ends, because of how closely tied they are in the story, I feel like that kind of FFB a little bit on the safer side because of its close link to its spin-off title.
You know what came with Parasite Eve though? So we had the Parasite Eve collab, right? So with that we had like a single challenge level, I think, and we had a broken Clash of Wills.
Mm-hmm.
We had
Sure.
the really crappy Clash of Wills.
It was
Well, I
really
don't
bad.
deny it was. It's like we all have our PTSD from Anthemosa.
Yes.
Like we will never forget the horror that was Anthemosa. But at the same time, Anthemosa, while a very, very horribly tuned Clash of Wills, the amount of effort put into its design, its attack names, its lore, like it actually had a proper full bestiary lore compared to our last two with Inugami and Lynx XO5 right now. Those two only have like maybe a sentence worth of lore, whereas Anthemosa has like the proper paragraph worth of a lore entry of her history. And even her attack names are very relevant to her theme as an opera singer. Like there's a lot of opera-based terminology in her attacks. And
Sure.
like whoever created Anthemosa put a lot of care and effort into these attack names and the setups behind the attack names, and I felt it was like even though it was a crappily coded Clash of Wills, it was still a Clash of Wills where you saw the effort put in. Like it wasn't a one and done deal. Like they actually wanted to try and put some real effort into this Clash of Wills with the unit that came with it, and sadly it missed the mark.
Yeah.
But you see the real effort that was put into it.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is too, you've got to keep in mind is lots of these things are compartmentalized. So the like fight designer, the fight coder, the translator, the person that designed the thematic names and all are different people. So for example, on that, on that week, they may have put, a tier A employee that did all the lore and the naming and the thematics, and then that person may have been moved over to, just as an example, the Hio design team for 3 weeks, and therefore they didn't have any input in the Lynx fight, and that's why the Lynx fight was like the intern wrote a sentence and I'm done. So it's not like one person doing the Clash of Wills boss each month, and that person just puts in varying amounts of effort. It's a team of people, and sometimes it's pretty obvious the way some bosses definitely have different input from different people, and like you say,
Absolutely,
that one had really high detail and all, it was great. And then maybe the person that is so detailed and so enthusiastic about their work, maybe they went into the Hio design process, and that's why he's such a good unit, et cetera, et cetera. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing I love about the FFBE team when sometimes on the live streams. Like I've loved looking at the when we have live streams and they showcase the artwork or the design process for either like the new unit they're showcasing or the global vision card that's being announced with the live stream, and showing the detail and the work that the artist puts into it. As like an artist myself who works with my best friend on the regular, and like even the two of us are trying to create our own Final Fantasy title in our free time. Um, like the amount of detail, the effort put into it. Um, oh, when it when like, you see that care put into it.
Mm-hmm.
N- it sucks when it's not there. Like, like we've seen how it can be done with everyone. Like we have great events. A lot of the Clash of Will designs have been amazing. Like the boss designs. Like we love a lot of these boss designs every time. And even the units themselves that we get alongside the Clash of Will unit are beautiful artistic designs. Like we were talking about this before with pulling units. Like some people pull for meta, some people pull for nostalgia, and then you got some people like me who pull strictly based on design of a unit. Like I pulled tier units. Like um, an easy example is NV Tiana. Like Tiana is the crappiest NV we have out of all our Clash of Will units with her 5 elemental LB and her really, really terrible kit. But for me, I personally love that unit from both a design perspective and a lore perspective. Like, I could see the care that was into that character. And it's like, she's a character that's really symbolizes innocence and childlike hope for a better future. And like I saw that in the character and it really resonated with me as someone who likes a character like that. And that's one of the reasons I went all the way to pity for her, even though he obviously was not a great unit to have in your team.
So I guess what you're saying is you just like to see maybe some consistency or balance in like what they design and what they create and how it all works together, rather than it just being amazing on some and absent on another.
Yeah, and I know, and that's asking a lot. I know it's asking a lot. Like with any artist, like burnout's inevitable. Well, not everything's gonna be a hit. It, but when the care and the time is actually put in, and you see it, even if it's just small things, like I said for Anthemosa, the thematic naming of all her attacks,
Mm-hmm.
like that was a special care put in by whoever created Anthemosa,
But
and I thought that was beautiful.
so
But
that all takes time, resources, money, just like the events and the content takes time, resources, and money. Uh,
exactly,
it just supporting and running the game takes time, resources, and money. So like, I guess there has to be some sort of benefit to them putting the content out, right? Like it has to be worthwhile. I think Sinzar, I was listening to your video about tactics, upcoming tactics units earlier, and like making those units worthwhile, worth the investment, worth the time, and like also I would say right alongside of it, having the events to run with it. Having there's no point in pulling units that won't even be able to be used for events and stuff. So like we have to have stuff to do with them other than just one Clash of Wills fight or even two Clash of Wills fights, or something. But we're missing that right now, and the impact of that is bigger than just us not being able to play the game. It's lapis and upgrades and nostalgia and all kinds of things. And I'm curious for you guys, what other than just like the tangible like lapis and stuff like that. What is the impact that you guys feel big picture of this missing content?
Uh,
So, oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, please, Sinzar, always after you.
I was gonna say for me, it's the fun of doing the fights, and I make videos and all, so it's a little bit more than just doing the fight. I like doing the fight sometimes with multiple teams if the
Mm-hmm.
fight deserves it. I haven't been recently because the EX fights have, for the most part, been relatively simple. One team is just whatever, it's enough. But doing the fights, it can be fun, and it's like even though they're not trial level, it's still something to do, and I would usually look forward to on Thursday. I'd wake up usually early to be there right when server comes up in the morning, and I'd go in there and I'd have fun spending an hour, 2 hours making videos of the fights, and it's very fun. Um, and that's just been missing recently because fights have been just more and more and more. I think it started with like the Dark Fena crowns. They've just been slowly taking away these fights, and when you take away like the EX fights and all, you're left with just nothing but a grindy,
Mm-hmm.
incredibly boring event like mog farming and raids. Like you could take those out of the game entirely, and I could care less. Like those add
Yeah.
nothing to the game. I know like the resources and all, but the actual content itself is beyond useless in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like that is not why I play Brave Exvius.
A naked team of bonus units can clear out,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
a Mog King or a raid. And like this one in particular that just came out today. I was really surprised with the sheer volume of NVAs that have the gathering tag. I guess it's because it's all like B characters, like, but they're all NVAs, and and some of them are 3-star NVAs that actually do really good damage, like Amarant. And so it's like, why am I pulling these units for a raid?
I mean, for what it's worth, Naked Seeker of Freedom Vaughn's auto attack can do 3.5 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and gathering tag is basically just supporting gas. It's
Mm-hmm.
any character who is not the lead protagonist
Yeah.
of the story they're from.
Yeah.
Except for Final Fantasy VI's case, where Terra and Celeste interchange that role, so they can both fall under
Yeah.
being MC
Well,
and not MC.
Right.
what about 12? Because Vaughn has
Yeah.
gathering.
Well, I was gonna say Balthier's the main character, but he's gathering too, so that's interesting.
Isn't Ash the main character?
Ash is technically the main
Balthier's
character story-wise,
Yeah.
but Vaughn is like the
Yes.
player-controlled main
Yes.
character.
I mean, the other end of that coin is they
12
made
is-
Fina a gathering character, and she's the main character of season 3. So
Mm.
it's enough said.
Lastwell's gathering too.
For 12,
Oh,
Poor guy.
well, yeah, well, in the end, like, if we really had to look at it, Rain is the main protagonist of the entire Final Fantasy Brave Exvius franchise,
True.
with Lastwell and Fina as the main supporting cast. With Final Fantasy XII's case, it's a lot like 6 in that even though the main character you play is Vaughn, and Altair goes on saying that he is more so the main character than Vaughn. Vaughn, all the characters, playable characters in Final Fantasy XII, have equal footing in the story. There's no one true main character. Like everyone has equal standing in that game compared to other games like 7, where you would definitely feel like Cloud is more the main character than, say, Barrett or Red 13.
Sure.
But in JP, they've kind of like broken the rule of the gathering thing because like in Xenogears, like Faye is unquestionably the main character. But
Mhm.
Faye also has gathering tag in JP, so they're kind of like not carrying the proper classifications anymore.
Interesting. Okay, so just to dive back into it. So Sinzar says he's missing fun. He's missing out on the experience of playing the game and it being fun. What were you going to say, Barry?
So they, Hiroki predominantly, is well documented in saying that JP and Global are different games. And it's pretty much been the long-standing, meme at this point that that's the case, but it's become more and more abundantly clear that they will only maintain that if it's convenient for them to do so. Because what they've shown is, yes, in fact, they are very different games in that JP gets content and Global doesn't. And Global gets this quote unquote original content in the form of Clash of Wills, but at this point, just getting a Clash of Wills event every month does not preclude the degree of content and resources and lapis that we miss from the drop off in what we're not getting. And so, really, for me, what's missing is the experience of what the original point of FFBE was, which was that we wanted an original story that we could also then take through our favorite Final Fantasy characters and use them in this world, in this system. And not only are we not getting any content to use them, we're not getting any upgrades that make those units viable. We're just outright not getting some of those units now at this
Mm-hmm.
point. And so really what we're seeing, or at least what I'm seeing as time is going on with all of the stuff that they're cutting, is they're taking away from what the original draw of this game has been for 7 years, which is that we have a game with what used to be a really good story and then was a terrible story and now is, I guess I'll put a story in quotation marks, um, where we have the option of taking characters from Final Fantasy titles through those story events, but they are so tremendously inferior. And if you pull one because you like it in global, you know, in most cases, you are pulling something absolutely dead and obsolete, almost DOA.
Mm.
And so everything that they're cutting is just completely changing what this game is, which is now you pull for global units. And you pull for global units for global content, and the rest of the game may or may not even ever show up.
Speaking of, well, go ahead.
I was going to say, just going even deeper, it's
Mm-hmm.
like Brave Exvius as a whole has been cutting like what made it Brave Exvius.
Yep.
Like what drew in the millions and millions of downloads is, the action RPG or whatever, not action RPG, but you get it. Like we had questing, we had explorations, we had cities, we had story events every single month, we had 2, 3, or even 3 Chamber of the Fallen Trials every single month, Chamber of Arms every single month, a new Esper every 1 or 2 months. Like all of this stuff has been slowly stripped away from the game as a whole, not just in global and JP too. Like they took away questing from the story mode, they took away explorations, they took away, they just retired the Chamber of Arms, they retired the Chamber of the Fallen. That's like the regular trials, like
Mm-hmm.
Storm and Moon and all that. We don't get espers anymore. Like we don't get story events anymore. JP stopped doing story events too. Like just Brave Exvius as a whole has been slowly just whittling down to nothing but in JP Dark Visions, in Global Dark Visions, and Clash of Wills. I guess JP, their Clash of Wills is Dark Visions Abyss, which
Mm-hmm.
is their version of Clash of Wills. And yeah, both the games just like that's all it is anymore, and it's unfortunate because I really enjoyed a lot of that other stuff.
I mean, say what you will. For people who didn't like it, that's certainly well within their prerogative to do so. But Bahamut's Island and Asura's Temple and the area around it, and even Madam's Manor, those were dungeons. And if you've not played RPGs, dungeons are tasks you undertake, and they're supposed to feel like a slog, and they're supposed to have great rewards after it. And in most of those cases, they did, because Bahamut and Asura are still the best espers in the game. And Madam's Manor, at the time when Adele came out, was pretty much required to make her as incredible of a unit as she was, albeit in a much more condensed way because we flew through that era of 7-star so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so those dungeons made the fact that FFBE, like what you just said, Sinzar, it was a good story that also had other content to keep you interested while you waited for more story. And then we took away the fact that the story sucks. After season 2, the story has been pretty much unplayable. You just go in, you get your lapis, you leave. The other content has now been completely stripped away to ranked content. And
Yep.
I hate ranked content unless you can share ranked one, because ranked content is in its pure whale bait. And for what? For resources to make your stuff stronger so that the far pull farther ahead and every other player just goes to completion, because why not? It's barely a game anymore. It's really try to gather as much resources to pull the unit in a cycle. There's nothing to do, there's nothing to play, and it's not an RPG anymore, which was the coolest thing, because season 1 of FFBE's story was it's one of the best Final Fantasy stories that I've seen. And it's not to say that it's not, like the rest aren't probably better, but there's just more to them.
Hmm.
But how many hours did we put into the first season of FFBE? And how much time did you spend
Lot.
banging your head up against the wall that was that Saul fight at the top of the Crystal Tower
Hmm.
before they nerfed it, right? How long and how rewarding did it feel when you finally got through it?
Oh
And then all of a
man.
sudden you get 100% Trust
I
Master
was gonna
Moogle
say,
for like
remember
the
how
first time in the
awesome it
game.
was to get
And that
that
was so
first
important.
100% trust Moogle?
Exactly.
Now
But
it's like,
then
oh man,
how
another
much
100%
time,
trust Moogle.
right? And then how much time did you
That-
spend agonizing over the decision of who you used it on?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there's
And
the first season and then really through the second season was the best FFB has ever been because it was its own game that had other things to do.
Yeah.
And now it is just, what even is it? I asked this not that long ago. Why do we even still pull for units? What do we use them for? If none of us cared about the ranked content, then what would we do?
Right.
Would we pull ever? Sinzar is currently sitting at 500,000 lapis on his JP account because he only wants to ever spend 10k on Neovisions Plus because the drop rates are terrible. What's the point? He still plays the game for still makes videos for it every now and again. If any of us stopped pulling like that and all of us just had a bankroll of 500,000 lapis, we'd see exactly how nothing there was to do in this game. And for new players who've come into the game recently, I mean, I'm my best friend just got back into the game and he hasn't touched the game since year 2. So he's got nothing and he played for 2 weeks at the time. He's already got a Malphasy well over 8500 magic and he's probably a rank 64 player.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember how long it took any of us to hit 1,000 in a stat if you didn't have Olive? Like regular 5-star base
don't
Olive? You
Yeah.
couldn't do it.
like
It
It
was
took me
an adventure for
so
sure.
long to get 1,000
and
stat. And I'm
just
pretty
like
sure my first one was Ong, in fact. It was True Double Hand Ong was my first 1,000 stat unit. It's part of why he means as much to
just
me as he
like
does. It's
oh,
just
and just
what
going
is
back
there?
to like Soul as well. Well, like not even Soul was the hardest fight in the early days. Like you could look back even further before Soul. You had fights like
Preemptive
the
Veritas with
first
a win.
encounter,
Yes.
yeah, the
Hmm.
preemptive Veritas of the Heavens fight,
Done.
which just knocked you dead. Some of the Esper fights were so hard to acquire. Like Carbuncle was considered one of the
Oh my
toughest
gosh.
fights. And everybody's like, it's Carbuncle. How is he the hardest summon to obtain?
Yeah.
And just like, do you really want to know?
At their
Here,
time,
go
some of those
fight
were
him.
pretty difficult, you know,
Hmm.
at their time. They all had their little quirks. So
But even back
Exactly.
then, the extra content was hard. Like let's talk about what was it the FF11 Ifrit and Golem raids?
mhm.
Was it 11 or 14? I can't remember.
I think
It-
it's the what it's
Yeah,
11.
11 or
we
14.
had
I think 14.
Garuda. It
That's
was
it.
Garuda, Ifrit, and Titan for 14
Titan.
raids.
That's
Titan.
what
It
it
was
was.
Titan, yeah.
It was 14. Okay. But
Yep.
like those were hard.
Yep.
Those were hard.
I
And
remember beating the
lest we
Titan one like
forget
at the last 30 minutes of the server being up and I was so excited.
lest we forget season 2's version, Hasako, anyone?
We don't talk
Good
about that.
old
The memories.
Oh no, we're talking about Hasako.
So
But see,
We're
this
talking
was
about
content that
Hasiko.
you had to prepare for.
stuff to do, right? So definitely you're both hitting on the same thing. Stuff to do, things to play the game. And right now, this week, we're not getting a bunch of it. And one argument that has come up is, you know, we're not getting it because it gives lapis. And since we're with the compensation thing, this is an easy way to wipe out, 7,500 of that lapis that would have been spread out over this span of 2 weeks by not doing the stuff that was supposed to come with this. Would you rather, given the opportunity, not gotten the compensation and had the stuff to do, or just get the compensation? Here's your lapis.
Well, this compensation is so dramatic.
It is.
Like, because it's not just lapis either. It's 30,000 gold lapis. It's 300 tickets. It's. I'd take the
A
compensation,
lot
and
of
and,
shit.
and I'd lose the 5 fights because I mean it's so dramatic. If it
Mhm.
was just the lapis,
Well, it's not
then
just going to be this
I'm
week though. What if it's this week and next week and the week after that and the week after that, and before you know it, we don't get tactics because they're just skipping all the fights that go with it in order to not give you the lapis.
that is true, but also they have been reducing lapis as a whole recently. There's a guy that keeps track of the monthly
Mm-hmm.
lapis on Reddit, and like September was 47,000 free to play lapis. October was 25,000. We went down by 22,000 monthly lapis in October. November, I'm almost certain is going to be another huge drop off.
Yeah.
So we're going to be like 23,000 monthly free to play lapis in November. So they've just been cutting lapis across the board.
Do we think that
Uh,
that's because of like the replica lapis though?
it definitely is absolutely part of it. But what the global team loves to do is they make a gradual change, and they'll slightly revert it at the end of a period, and then you'll come out after like this 3 month weaning you off of it. You'll come out worse. For example, they did the the lapis shards, and they took away the 5K lapis bundle from the shop.
Mm-hmm.
And once those shards stop, those bundles of the shop are not going to go back. They're just going to be gone. But it's the players have been conditioned after like 3 months of not having them. When the alternative is also taken away, which is presented as like a celebration bonus, you're going to be left with that being taken away entirely. They've done the same thing with like bundle sales and all that. They'll
Oh.
change it slightly, then
Mm-hmm.
they'll backpedal partially, but at the end of the day, the final result is worse than where you started.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. So yes, because of the replica lapis, we're getting less per month. But once the replica lapis, the whole anniversary, Global does their 3 or 4 month anniversary. Once that finishes, probably after Christmas, and we go back to normal monthly lapis, instead of going back to 47,000 average per month, I'd estimate we go back to like 33,000 per month. And we're going to be like 10K less than before because the global player base has spent 4 months getting not as much. And
Which is
most people just get,
not. That's not even half of a unit. Well, it's half a unit because well, 33 would be 66. So yeah, if a regular unit is 56K, like that's like 2/3.
Yeah, at this point, 20,000 lapis for us is a global vision card
Yeah.
at best.
I want to go back to those bundles too, because I look through the bundles every week just because I do for fun. Sometimes they matter, sometimes they don't. But this week, and I can't remember if they did it last week. This week, the shard cash bundles, they've cut the lapis in them again. When they first started doing these bundles, you used to be able to get 50 shards and 16,000 lapis for that 47.99 American. And then they cut the lapis to 13,000, gave you 50 for a little bit, but then they'd give you 16,000 for 25 shards. Okay, fine. And but you could buy
47.99 American.
oh yeah,
You guys
but
get cheap.
you could buy 2 of them, right? So you could get, you spend double the money, you get double the lapis, but you still only have 50 shards. This time it's 47.99 American for 25 shards and only 10,000 lapis. I
You know what
I
those?
cannot wrap my head
You know what?
around it.
Try wrapping your head around it in Canadian dollars. Those 47 bundles are closer to $60 or $70 here in Canadian dollars.
And I know part of that
Like
is
the
because the app stores have changed the way that you're
Mm-hmm.
allowed to price things. So it's kind of hard to go conversion apples to apples. I'm strictly speaking relative to what it was to what it is now.
Yeah.
Every week, every time we got bundles, you used to have a $100 American bundle that had 28,000 lapis plus extra. And then you had a $4.99 American bundle that had 22,000 lapis and extra, and then you'd have your 2 bundles that had shards in them, usually gave you 16,000 lapis plus shards. And they have just slowly been decreasing that, so they're even disincentivizing whales to continue to spend because you're spending the same amount of money for tremendously less. Fortune and treasure pools. Treasure pools have pretty much stayed consistent, but fortune pools used to have 25 shards for the unit and also gave you a pity ticket. And then they took the pity ticket away, and it's basically you're getting $1 a shard plus the chance at maybe pulling the unit on banner. Maybe, if you're lucky. No one I ever know ever
even
does.
some of like the even some of the smaller bundles, like the minnow bundles, like the Fountain of Lapis, used to be
A month.
like what,
It
50
used to be a month.
a month worth of 55,700 lapis, and I think now it's been reduced by almost 2,000. It's
And
still
it's
the
only
same
half a month,
price.
and they still run one a month. Mm-hmm.
Craziness.
So I don't understand the business decisions here because it's not as though no one who plays this game talks. Like they built this community, they know. They did this whole thing called a fan festa where they want people to get together and talk about how glorious this game is and what a blessing it's been on mobile gaming culture and Final Fantasy as a franchise. But then they make these subtle innocuous changes that we're supposed to just be like, "Oh yeah, that's fine." No, it's not. The cost of a unit has tripled. The amount of free lapis we get in a month is halved. And then they've even made it so that if you needed just that little bit of extra lapis, you're compromising your family's ability to eat for a week. Come on,
Yeah.
man.
And
This is the worst business decision I've ever seen in my life. And for those questioning, yes, I do have a business degree. This is the best way to milk as much as you can before you cut it off and kill it. But what is Dissidia doing now that they've suddenly announced end of service? Now they have to go through app stores and start to give refunds. So is it really that good of an idea to do the things that they're doing right now? No. No, it's really not, because they're still going to recoup every single one of those costs in refunds, and they're just going to bleed red at the end of it. And Square really doesn't have the luxury of compromising more sales and going further into the red, unless you believe the rumors that they're going to try to sell it to Sony. But 16 is largely considered a failure. Each one of their new titles, their new IPs that they've brought out, is largely considered a failure on a global level. Their only successful title at the moment is 14, which is a miracle in and of itself. But they had to burn that to the ground and start it over, I guess, what, 10 years ago now,
Mm,
something like that?
hmm
So what is Square not figuring out here? If you violate app's terms of service by trying to get players to spend these things on the understanding that the service is going to continue, and then you suddenly announce the end of service, and you're slowly diminishing what you're giving players in that time, but you're still keeping that cost consistent. If the players decide that the agreement has been breached, the App Store is going to side with the players. And the App Store is going to pull that money back from the account, because that's how refunds work. Your point of sale system will pull that money from your account because their large holding bank account will be linked to the transaction point of sale system that is the app stores, and it will take that money directly from their account and put it back into that of the players, or potentially in store credit on the app store, depending on how people configure it. That is how you bankrupt your company. And we're not talking dollars and cents. We're talking Final Fantasy Brave Exvius was in the red at $900,000 in gross revenue, which means they made almost $1 million in a month and still ran red in gross revenue. So what do you do if you just had a red month of almost $1 million in collections, and then your player base starts to recoup those? Where does that money come from?
Mm.
Somebody's got to pay it, because the players are entitled to receive it, lest we start to get attorneys involved. So this is becoming a much bigger issue than they potentially understand, and all for what? Because they're not honoring the agreement of the sale. And they're not honoring the whole point of what this is, which is you are providing this game as a service to the players who are consuming it and potentially recontributing money back in to create a cyclical symbiotic agreement.
That
It's
right
fake.
now, we can't even play because there is not game to play.
Correct. And even when there is game to play, half of your player base can't log in because of the Facebook issue. So,
Yeah.
from a business and financial perspective, what's going on right now gives me incredible amounts of anxiety. As somebody who owns a business, that I can't imagine trying to do the things that they are doing, or to even put my business in a position where this could possibly be the public's perception, because that spreads like wildfire.
So
And
perception, though, that's huge, right? And
it is.
we formulate that based on just like ideas that we have, and like trying to analyze trends, trying to like look at what their communication is versus what it isn't, what they decide to communicate on versus what they decide not to communicate on, what they decide to upgrade versus not, what they skip, what they don't. Like we create this perception based on all of that, and we really only hear from them when there's an absolute total like company ending dumpster fire thing happening.
Yep.
Instead of like, oops, this happened, or hey, here's something we're doing, or hey, here's why we're doing this versus not doing this. Like there's very little communication. I feel recently we had the communication about the compensation issue was great, but like that's one of those like major dumpster fire issues. Like that's the only time we ever hear from them, other than like all we ever hear is, dumpster fire issue or buy this new unit.
Mhm.
And that's what leads to that
This
perception.
is the And speaking from the community manager's point of view, like I understand a lot with PR relations, and the biggest issue for Justin and Tony, sadly, is that they're stuck under the effects of non-disclosure
Oh
agreements.
no, I'm not even saying that
With
they
a
should be
lot
able to
of,
speak freely. I'm saying the
Mhm.
game should communicate with its players.
Mhm.
and that's the thing. Like I know for a fact, like I talked to Justin a few times on Reddit through private messaging, and there's clearly times they want to talk more about these issues, but unfortunately, they, they aren't pre-approved or they're not approved to talk about these issues. And if they do try to talk about these issues without the approval, they will be fired on the spot.
Oh, I'm sure.
And oh, absolutely. Like it's a guarantee. 100%. Like I have a friend who worked in the film industry. She does special effects and 3D effects for movies,
Mm-hmm.
like big name movies. Like she recently did the Marvels, and like she couldn't tell me anything. She's not been allowed to tell me anything
Yeah.
until the movie releases, because if she tells me what she's working on, then she can be held accountable for it and fired for it immediately. Hell, she could even be sued and be forced to pay money for
No.
disclosing anything
You're
within that contract.
100% right, but that's a different issue, right? This is like
Yeah.
if you went to the Marvels and the movie theater, like they stopped being able to project the movie during the movie, and then
Mhm.
they didn't tell you anything about it. They just said, "Come back next week and buy another ticket."
Didn't
Not
Yep.
even
And that
come
was
back next week for free. Come back next week and buy another ticket.
and that's after they doubled the price of the ticket and cut the
Yes,
number of seats in the theater in a third.
and you have to buy your popcorn again.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like
So
that's what's
those are two
happening
different
in
issues.
FFBE for sure.
And
And
maybe this is really just the consequence of what their own perception they're creating is, but nervous consumers
Mm-hmm.
do very rash things. And nobody's going to care if their account gets banned if they start abusing the refund policy at this point in the game's life, because they're not doing anything in the game that would make anybody miss it. we miss what we thought what we miss is what the game used to be.
Mm.
And we miss it all the time. And at this point, a lot of us play for the fact that we still enjoy the game, but we also enjoy the nostalgia that we have for it.
Mm.
And we can go back and look through our accounts and remember the things that we did with those units if we haven't sold them for trust coins. Which again, we have nothing
Yeah.
to do with, but that's another issue.
Yes.
So,
And
question,
a
Garrett,
lot of
Yes.
about the communication thing.
Yeah.
All right. So, as somebody that like is frequently on page, which best content there is,
Fact.
I've mentioned in the past about the communication stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was good to begin with, but now I'm like on the opposite side. I actually think the communication they gave us was bad. Like
You
even
you
the
mean
in-game
about the
messages,
the compensation issue?
Mhm.
Yeah.
because they haven't followed up on it at all. So when I originally did that, I was just like, oh, this means that we're going to get weekly updates or something until we know exactly what's going on when we're going to get it. But we haven't got those. So now I think that the communication is actually bad because it's like gaslighting people.
Yes.
So like
it
now
really is
everybody's
that
like logging
hey,
in thinking about, hey, what if are we going to get it now? Are we going to get it now? We have no information anywhere else. This affects my planning because it's a major compensation. Like, should I be using these resources? What if they change their mind? They are obligated to do whatever they want. It's their game. We don't know what they can do at any point in time. The fact that they haven't followed up on this at all, even just a tiny Twitter message, nothing, makes me like very worrisome, and it's made other people worrisome to where, like, I think I mentioned this earlier. People are asking, are we even getting our Vision World stuff while Hio's up? Like, are they going to push that back too so we can't use it for Hio? Like, what exactly is their plan? Because like they already have a lot of upset customers, so like you're not helping anything by not saying anything. All you're doing is making yourself look worse,
Mm.
and it's not very hard. You can't tell me they don't have enough employees or whatever reason you want to come up with that they can't type up a message to put in game. A message is not content. A message is just PR, like not being a shitstorm and making people happy. We were talking about like content things that you can do to make people happy. A single message in game in the news anytime during the day, it doesn't even have to be regular news time, anytime that they want,
Mm-hmm.
about, hey, this is what's going on. Sorry about the delay. This is what we're going to do to fix things, etc. Instead of a one-time message, and it's been several weeks now, right? Like we could like, and the community is so negative at this point where I don't think the Vision World thing would have ever been something people were worried about for this. But now it's starting to snowball the stuff that we're waiting on. We were promised that Alespris was going to get upgraded. We've now had 2 or 3 breakers since she came out. We still don't know anything about this. Like, so we got Kaito's upgrades. We got Hio, who also breaks. We got Frost, who also breaks.
Daniil, Avon,
Galif.
Avid, that
Galif.
was the other one. We've gotten Ava. We now have Gal. These are all breakers, right? Alespris is a
Vanille
breaker. They're
too.
not gonna. Was Alespris before Vanille?
She was.
Okay,
I do
so
believe
like,
so.
the point that makes it even worse. But like, so
Yes.
that's like 5 or 6. Like, you're not gonna change your role when they upgrade her, right? She's a breaker. This is what she does, right? What she's gonna even do that's gonna make people remotely happy, unless they just power creep the living crap out of everything we just got. Like, are they really gonna power creep premiums to make players happy? No, there's no way. Like, this is an off-banner unit that you can get very easily. You don't have to deal with all the premium BS. These are just an actual unit that people were excited for. About. Like, she's one of the fan favorites, right? So it's just really annoying because all these things are snowballing. Like, where's our Lespris information? We don't have anything on that. We don't have the compensation information. People were worried about Vision World Lapis because of this. It's just going to keep sending this field of dread over the community
Mm.
that they could fix by just having better communication. It's like, this is how this is going to be handled. Okay, cool. You're not going to make everybody happy because it's not going to be instantaneous or anything like that. But like, at least let people know like what's going on. It's like with the Carlet thing. It was so long before they said anything else about Carlet again. They're like, oh, I guess Carlet's this week. Like, you obviously don't care.
And
But you should act, as a company, you should at least act like you care.
But I mean,
like
that's been a
this is
consistent gripe we've
one
had with them for years.
Mm-hmm.
The
exactly like
communication's
that's
been
what I was gonna
paltry at
say.
best from year one.
And
Yeah.
communication has fallen off the wagon big time. Like, I mean, communication was never the best to begin with, but uh, I don't know.
But it's like anything
Maybe
else,
it's
though,
just
right?
yeah, like it is like anything else.
Like
Sure,
let's say that
sure,
there's like
and
5 things holding you to this game, right? And communication is one of them, but like communication is not that great. But you've still got all these other things that are like really fun for you because like maybe the trials are fun, or maybe the thrill of pulling units, relatively inexpensively is fun, and competing with your friends is fun, and like setting up units for friends so that they can do trials is fun. So like all those things are holding you to this game, right? So the communication not being great like is okay. But then all of a sudden the trials go away because we don't get them. And so
Mhm.
whatever. And the friends list is jacked, right? So, like it doesn't really even count as a thing that's holding us to this game. And like pulling, I got to do the right finger. Pulling units is, getting harder and harder and harder to do. And so like now, like there's like one good thing left, right? Maybe. And that is like going after the one piece of content that you like. Yeah, I know, I saw. I'm not going to do that finger, okay? So like now it's like the communication not being good when everything else is like a major fire all around all the time is an even bigger issue than it ever was. And like now it's like now that one string not being there really hurts more than it ever did to me. To me. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but like in any kind of relationship,
I'll
whether
be
you're
honest.
talking about work, personal relationships, family, now that one thing is gone and it hurts.
And,
Yep.
and I'll be honest, like the one strongest thing keeping me held on to this game so well has been our community. Like, I love talking to you guys. I love talking to anyone in the community in general. Well, I love hearing people's joys of the game. I even like listening to people's gripes about the game. And hell, I've made some really great friends in the community. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the big one being Zamalira, the creator of Bulwark. Like, he and I bonded as best friends when we were both putting our characters forward for the design contest. Like, we were back helping each other through it all, just trying to support each other through it because both of us did not have a lot of confidence in our work when we submit our characters, and the shitstorm that was the unit design contest, whether it was people just using stolen art for the character they submitted that got shortlisted, or just one character being a mishmash of different sprites from the game
Mm-hmm.
to create
Mm-hmm.
an original character in quotations. Like, we we were there for each other through it all. And like, I like talking strategies with Sinzar, or just having a good laugh with him personally. I like talking with Yugert when, whether it's the game or just life in general. And Barry here, I'm enjoying talking lore with him whenever we have a chance. And like, you and I, Barry, like, we're gonna have that stream one day where you and I are just gonna get the cork boards out and just talk FFBE lore and
Absolutely.
educate our community.
But we're not like the community's not creating and maintaining this game. Not in a practical sense, right? In a financial
Right.
way, of course,
Absolutely.
the community funds the game, but like we're not like making choices about the game. We're not influencing the game in a meaningful way.
Exactly. And in a lot of ways, that is a really bad thing. That maybe the only thing keeping some of us here is just the people we met along the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's the friends you made along the way that truly matter.
Mm.
Or that was the message all along in FFB.
There you go. There you go.
I mean, honestly, that is why
Uh,
I'm still here at this point. Like, there's very little reason. It's not like, I mean, obviously, my friend units show up for Sinzar whenever he's looking, and he knows that. It's perfect.
Oh, but you saw you showed up in the most recent one?
I sure did.
Yeah, you
It was
did.
it was amazing. I can't believe that's been like twice in a year. It's incredible. Um, but if not for that fact and the fact that how I've built up my account can be of use to other people, and I have been around long enough and can speak on this game borderline encyclopedically to the point where people sometimes care what I have to say.
Mm,
If not for any of that, the game itself holds almost no appeal at this point, other than I want to continue playing to be a part of the community and for the potential opportunities to help people enjoy the game. But that says a lot
Agreed.
because again, I am still playing this game because of what it has meant, not because of what it currently is.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that itself is simultaneously both a bad thing, because it's good in the sense that it shows that this game has brought us together in its own way, but at the same time, and it keeps us together by living and breathing. But at the same time, it's bad because it shows that game itself isn't what's keeping us back anymore. It's the people we've met. And like what the original question was, like what is missing in this game? And it's what it was originally built on. There was story, there was exploration, there was character development, there was lore, there was characters you could be excited for, and characters you got to learn more about. Like what season 1 and season 2 are collectively just one story, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's part 1 and part 2.
So I guess
Season
the takeaway of exactly what you're saying though is there was stuff to do.
there was stuff to do.
There
I
was.
think we've said
And
that once or
we're-
twice
I think
now.
we have said that once or
We've-
twice. There was stuff to do and characters to
I
care about to do it with.
I think I've kept a chart of it on my usual lore corkboard. Have to do mentioned. I think we've hit about 25 times now.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say it, mark it up again. Like we had stuff to do. Oh, and this is the thing that's been happening throughout the year of it, throughout the 8 years AP wise and 7 years global wise of its life, is that this game was ambitious. It had a lot, but as time moving forward, there- little by little, things kept getting cut out. So, like, if we look all the way back to the first year of FFBE, the like raids then versus raids now, like raids then had story aspect to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like even if it was a legacy world, there was times where like we went to tactics to fight what's the unit, the little iron giant unit. I forget
Worker
his
8.
name, but yeah, worker 8. Like you fight the worker 8 boss and you have this humorous dialogue of like it about to self-destruct, and
Mm-hmm.
Sakura and Laswell like freaking out over like it can't count properly when it's about to self-destruct. And I'm like, that's a good laugh. Like it's a fun little moment to enjoy from the story. Like it's the characters interacting with the world they're in.
Yeah.
But now you go into like a legacy raid event. It's literally just farm the points to get all the content.
And this one in
It's the
particular,
little
I think we touched on it earlier. This one in particular is not even tied to the units that came out because of the weird mishmash of stuff that's going on theoretically between this week and next
Exactly.
week.
Yeah,
Because it's
like,
Final
the
Fantasy IV
characters we
raid, but
have
you're
for the
taking Final Fantasy 6 and 5 characters to it.
Yeah, the banner is Final Fantasy 5 and 6 characters, but the raid itself is a Final Fantasy 4 boss.
Yeah.
And
Very,
it's just
very
like
strange.
like there's this obvious disconnect. It, er, and like loss of story has been the biggest thing for me because like all of you have called me in the last space carpet, you have called me the lore master, the lore aficionado. Oh, I've called myself the lore tour host on Reddit when I used to post some lore up there, or my personal theories of lore. Like lore has slowly been drained away from this game, and it really hit me hard when all our equipment descriptions has been reduced to generic. Like this is another cut that happened under the table that we weren't told or announced compared to something bigger like the end of the Spanish version.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Well,
of
surely
FFBE.
that does take a lot of effort to get all those translated into, all those
It
languages.
absolutely does. Like, I don't deny that translation is a big time consuming effort
Yeah.
put into all this. But the thing is, if you start cutting down on these translations for small things, eventually it could potentially ripple further into bigger things. Like, what if translation efforts into the actual story start getting reduced in up in some shape or form? Like, here's the thing we loved about the translated story in season 2, for a good example. Like, all of us have seen with Seagard. Seagard is the best example of this. Seagard's translated dialogue has a lot of American pop culture references.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks in no part to Shally, who worked in the translation team, on top of being our community manager as well. She intentionally inserted some of those uh, quirky translations and pop culture references as just a little flavor to the game. That gave it a little extra life or a little personal touch to it that made it its own thing. Like I loved it when Zeghard quoted a Smash Mouth lyric of all things.
Mm-hmm.
Like that caught me off guard in so many ways. Like it almost felt like I got rickrolled in
Yep.
its own way.
Yep.
But now, oh, nowadays you look at the current dialogue for season 4. Season 3, I would still say had some of its unique, quirky dialogues. Like Poppy had some Latina put into her dialogue. But season 4 feels very true to form a basic storytelling. Like it doesn't feel like it has as much character depth as
Hmm.
it did. Like it feels very one-noted.
You mean Rain and Roos battling each other nonstop isn't character depth?
For like 8 months.
I
For
hear what
8
you're
months.
saying. I do hear what
Yes.
you're saying.
Like it's like Roos is trying to fill in the hole that Laswell would be playing, as if it were season 1. Like he's the rival character to
Mm-hmm.
Rain, and the only problem with Roos that compared to Laswell, outside of the obvious fact that Laswell has had almost 5 to 6 years of journeying with us and us growing close to his character, um, Bruce feels very shoehorned
Mm.
into the story. And he doesn't feel like he has as much purpose. Like you understand his motivation. Like we've been told his motivations in the story. He's doing this for Nelica. He wants to save Nelica. He needs to learn his sword absorbs the abilities of foes that he's killed. but only if that foe has used that ability. That's why he wants to defeat Rain to obtain the Mirror of Equity that Rain knows, so he can combine it together with his own ability to use Omnibus, which is the technique YinToYang used to defeat Omega all by himself by using Mirror of Equity in one of his swords and his own ability in his secondary sword. That's why he's created as a dual sword user.
You may want to watch the
The-
spoilers for
Yeah,
the first
for people
season
who maybe
lore.
haven't gotten through
Like
all of it.
you were going like pretty deep in the spoilers there. That's probably not a good idea.
But
Sorry, my
that's okay. That's okay.
lore took over.
Lore takes over. So I realize I'm monitoring the time here. We've been at this for about almost 2 hours, and I want to make sure and just be respectful of you guys' time, and everybody else who's watching too. So is there anything else that we're not touching on that needs to be said before we wrap this up? Like we talked about, the impact of stuff being missing, from a Lapis perspective, from a fun perspective, from a player perspective and an interaction with the company perspective. Like, is there anything that we haven't touched on about like what's going on right now that you feel like needs to be said?
I got a question for all of you personally. What do you feel there's something the game could do that gets the community's involvement at an all-time high, like Tools of Sonnets was, that the game needs to do
Hmm.
bring us back again? Like if we were saying, like, going into Global's 8th anniversary, what do you think the devs themselves could do or announce during the 8th anniversary to get us hyped and involved again in a way that makes us excited down the line?
Hmm.
Bring back Trials.
Trials. Yeah.
I want
Right,
them to do
trial.
what they said they were gonna do. Any of it. If you're gonna do something, actually do it.
Okay,
Well,
commitment. We want commitment
follow
to
through.
a promise.
Follow through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actual communication. Like there's so many things that even from a business perspective that they've done recently that make zero sense to me. Like like the chamber that everybody loved
Mm-hmm.
and then just was dropped out of nowhere with no notice or anything. Like it's still in the game. It's not like you guys are like, oh, we're discarding this and moving it somewhere else. They could easily put that fight somewhere else in another category and just like take the chamber out of the game. Like, what is the point of keeping things around if you're not going to actually update them to use? Like, all right, here's this one-time thing. Like, people really like that content, and there's just stuff like that that you can do. Like, can you imagine like Change Root of the Vengeful had, I don't know, what would it have, like another 18 bosses by now in it?
It should
Like,
have.
there's a lot.
It should have,
There's
because
a
they
lot
said
of
it,
things.
over a year ago that they were gonna do that regularly, and so there should be at least 18 in there.
But we should be taking a lot of this like way more seriously, because like I don't want to. I want to like make sure people understand. I don't want to be over negative about this. But like, if they don't take care of their game, it's not gonna last a long time.
Mm. Well, and I think
Like,
I
you
think
have
they
to.
need to take care of players too, like because players, especially players who want to spend money on the game to support the game because it's fun and entertaining, and they have something to do in it. Like, if that money that they're spending is not worthwhile and it's getting spread further and further, or like the what you get out of it is going, you're getting less and less value out of every dollar you spend. Like, people, that's just not sustainable. And I know, like, prices go up, costs go up for all kinds of things, like milk and flour. Like, stuff is more expensive, but like at the end of the day, like, if I have to decide, like Barry said earlier, like between, do I buy that milk and flour or do I spend a little bit of money in this game that I enjoy playing? Like, I've got to choose the milk and the flour because that's more expensive and the game's more expensive and I need the milk and the flour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just priorities, right? Like at a certain point, if you want something to matter to somebody, you have to make it worth mattering to them.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I was saying like taking care of your game, like I just like the community is part of the game, right? Like if you don't take care of people, like they're not gonna stay around.
Yeah.
And all you're doing is like biting your own foot off at that point, right? Like you're just costing yourself money hand over fist every time that you do like a major mess up, right? Like um like even like the Facebook thing, right? Can you imagine like what the uproar would have been by now if they just decided to give nobody nothing and do nothing about it?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that were just going to quit. Like because it's like I understand it not being fair. Those people basically got $100 worth of hundred and something dollars worth of free lapis,
It's huge.
and then probably like $50+ worth of tickets and stuff like that. And overall a very small amount of the player base that got that stuff, right?
It
Like if it had
is.
just been like, ugh.
But at this point, if that's the justification for why we're not getting stuff to do, because they have to make up that lapis somewhere, and it's easier to do that than it is to like figure out how to remove the lapis from the people who shouldn't have had it. Like if it's easier to just like cut it out from everybody and then just give it like cut out all this content and then just dump lapis on people, then I would rather have the stuff to do. I would rather even have the stuff to do and take the lapis out of it. Like I miss everything that goes along with having stuff to do. It's fun, it's tickets, it's resources, it's upgrade materials, it's interaction with you guys while we're figuring stuff out. Like it's everything that goes along with it. So
yeah, like events and content don't have to have lapis to make them fun.
nope, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Like there were so many things back in the day that didn't have lapis rewards or had little lapis rewards. Hell, some of the fun content had beast meat as rewards. Like
Beast meat, yes.
like when there's like infinite beast meat memes at that point.
Yeah.
Like it's just stuff like that. Like yes, lapis and stuff matters. Yes, you should be nice to your players and tell them that like yes, that's free to play. You can play to an extent,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But I hope you're wrong, and that's not why they're doing this. And I hope it's just like a random situation, like with Cater, where they're this like. I can only assume they just ran out of time for what they needed to do for anniversary, and something got cut. But I can't really think of a reason that they would like if they end up cutting units, right? Like so, like if Rydia and Setzer get cut, right?
Yep.
What's it? I can't think of a decent like justification for it because it's not like Christmas is next week, right? Like if Christmas was next week and you had to have the Christmas banner out, yeah, maybe I could see it, right? Like you have Christmas and then like New Year's and stuff like that. You have to have stuff like that out because it's the only time that you're allowed to do it. Whatever Square Enix tells you. Yeah, sure. We got like 3 weeks. Like if we just skip units to skip units, like we did before with like Maria, like I understand that a lot of stuff like they justify it by these like super popular, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can show you a lot of units that weren't super popular we did get, right? I can show you things in the past that we skipped that people would have cared about a lot. Like one that Sinzar has brought up multiple times. You know how happy a lot of people would have been about edge crowns?
Yep, for sure. Budget option.
Like, edge was great. Also, yet another Final Fantasy IV slight if we don't get Rydia. Didn't get edge crowns, which was like one of the other like cool things that I was excited for a while. And it was like, oh, we just got skipped. And then there was Bart's buffs. Oh, well, those just got skipped. There's like no good justification for it.
Well,
I can very, very slightly see the Cater reasoning.
Right.
But it's just really annoying if you're right and it is possible. I don't even think it's a tin hat theory. I think like it's an actual reasonable thing. It could be cutting because like well we have to make up because we can't hit our bottom line that much, right? So if we take stuff from other stuff and then just give it out as a lump sum, it's not technically giving it to you. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, hey, here's a delayed payment for you doing events, basically. And I think that's also really bad. Like obviously we would never know if that was the case or not.
Mm-hmm.
But I really hope that's not what's going on as they
But-
get stuff because
But we're left wondering because they don't tell us.
there's no communication.
Because
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm gonna stop us here. Does anybody like last final throwaway one words or one sentence from each of you, and then we'll be done.
I just hope they bring, unit crowns again, including global crowns.
Ooh, yes. Global crowns and unit crowns.
Give us communication. Make us care about the game again by giving us stuff and not skipping it.
Mm-hmm.
And if nothing else, at least make us feel that you care about the game.
Mm.
Yeah, show us you care about the game, guys. You have showed us in the past so many times that you care about this game and you're willing to go that extra mile to make something original and unique just for us. Show us that creativity again. Show us why we fell in love with this game so many times.
Well said. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you spending spending two hours with us talking about all this. I guess my one sentence would be, we just all want stuff to do, and we want that stuff to be meaningful. So please give us stuff to do. But until then, until next time, until hopefully some stuff to do comes up, we'll be done for now, and we will see you guys in whatever next video comes along. And thanks for everybody who's been hanging out on the stream this whole time too. You guys have all been great. Thank you so much for getting in the chat. And yeah, have a good night, everybody.
Later.
Take care,
Yeah.
guys.